few would be an understatement, a lot of articles on cinema, and has conducted a session on film adaptation on fiction at Bangalore University, and has made short films on social innovation. He conducted a film appreciation course in Christ University as well. He is one of the selection. He's one of the panel members of films for BIFES 2022. And additional to that, he also has a blog on Medium and a series of film analysis posts on Instagram. So I welcome Mr. Babu Subramanian for to today's lecture, and over to you, Babu.
Thank you, Nikhil.
Yeah,
that was a nice introduction, and yeah, it's good to meet you all. And this is the first time I'm meeting the members of Parallel Cinema Club and Bangalore Film Forum, and a few others. And I have a couple of my friends also joining here. So it's nice to have my friends also in this meeting. Yeah, I read something interesting today. This is on this is a review of Citizen Kane, which got the maximum number of likes, 4,653. It's just one-line review, and it says it wasn't as good as Shrek 2, but it was okay, which I thought was a joke. And well, I also read an article on that, and it's pretty interesting. And yeah, the assumption is that Shrek 2 is slapstick, and Citizen Kane is very intellectual and very emotionally stimulating kind of film and all that. Okay, but that doesn't mean that it's devoid of comedy. Actually, it has some very fine comic acting, editing, and all that. And in fact, so many scenes. One of them is when Susan tells reporters that she finds it funny when she says that Charlie said, if I didn't go to the opera house, he would build me an opera house. Okay, she says that. She's smiling. Obviously, she finds it ridiculous, the idea, and the reporters also find it ridiculous. And then it cuts to, newspaper headline, which says, Kane builds opera house. Okay. I thought it's very funny. I mean, there's so many sequences like this. So as much as it's very intellectually satisfying, it also has a lot of humor. Okay. So, yeah. Anyway, so now, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, I thought of starting with this slide, okay, and I think you people, some of you might have seen this film recently, I mean, which came a year or two back. It's on Netflix. This is a film based on, the making of Citizen Kane. Does it ring a bell? Hello? Oh, yeah. Vivek says it's Mank, and he's right. Yeah, it is Mank. Okay. And yeah, shall we go to the next slide? Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, the film, it tries to show Mank as a hero, and he tries to say that he was the sole scriptwriter and all that. And, and also shows Wells as somebody who took, the joint scriptwriter credit, which he didn't deserve, or something like that. It has several other distortions, which I've discussed in a long essay. So anyway, it's interesting that, the making of Citizen Kane itself is somewhat mysterious, and there's so much writing which has been done on the making of Citizen Kane and who wrote Citizen Kane and all that. And here we have even a film, in fact, a couple of films. There's already an excellent film on that. Okay, so that's interesting. So I thought, People who have seen Mank can, you know, relate to, you know, how important, you know, the film Citizen Kane is, because, you know, it's been talked about again and again and again. Next slide, please. Yeah, it's among the greatest. This is something which everybody knows, but I thought I'll put it. It was number one in Sight and Sound poll for 50 consecutive years, which is you know, something great. Okay. And yeah, yet another thing is that, you know, Francois Truffaut, the French filmmaker, okay, he has said that this is a film which started the largest number of filmmakers on their careers. Okay, which means the film is so influential. And even for many of us, I can definitely say about myself, when I saw Citizen Kane, I was really thrilled and, well, definitely, I thought I should also make a film. So this is that kind of film which really, you know, instills interest in cinema. Okay. Yeah. Next slide, please. So now, yeah, something interesting about Citizen Kane is that, you know, it's a very interesting to discuss. It's a plot segmentation, and I've largely taken it from, you know, the book, you know, Film Art and Introduction. Okay, it's a textbook, you know, for students of cinema. Okay, by David Thompson, and so we have to, you know, figure out what is the difference. And by the way, in this talk, I will pose some questions, and you know, I don't expect answer, because even I can't answer a question suddenly. If I'm, you know, asked a question, I may find it a bit difficult to answer. I may have to think a while, okay, and then answer. I don't expect anybody to answer immediately, but, you know, this is to engage the you know, participants, so that, you know, you can set them thinking, and so that they'll be involved, you know, in listening to this talk. That's the idea of putting the question. So yeah, so here's a question: what is the difference between story and plot? Does anybody want to try? Even if it is the wrong answer, it's okay. Plot is subset of story. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Any other answer? By the way, now we have Murli Nagasundaram here, the endings. Oh, that's interesting. We have Dr. Murli Nagasundaram here, my pal, you know, who is a creativity expert, and who always says there are no wrong answers. So you can always attempt, and all answers are right. So just that we are trying to, you know, figure out, you know, for ourselves, and you know, trying to understand, you know, the difference and all that between, you know, story and plot, so that it can give us some insight into the film Citizen Kane. Okay, because it's very crucial with the Citizen Kane. Okay. Well, Saket, plot is the framework. Okay. Now let's see. Sudanthan, plot captures the core idea of the story. Will story? Sorry, I couldn't read it. Okay. Anyway, it's good. It you know, keeps the audience engaged. So yeah, I'll keep posing some question or other. So it's not to test somebody's intelligence. And as I said, I myself may not be able to answer offhand, you know, some questions. Okay. So shall we go to the next slide? Oh, it's already there. Okay, fine. Yeah. See, story is a chain of events in a chronological order. Okay. So one after the other. Okay. Whereas in the case of plot, you know, it is the way the story is presented, and we may even do some reordering. It may not be from beginning to end. Okay, you can start with the end, and you can show the beginning, and then you can show the middle or whatever. Okay, so that's the difference between, essentially. I mean, this is a huge topic by itself, but very briefly, a plot is the way the story is presented. There's something crucial to Citizen Kane. The next slide, please. Yeah, so what is Citizen Kane's story? Because, when you see the film, what you see is the plot, okay? And we have to construct the story. If the film is, made chronologically, actually, the film is biography of an individual. And so, people would have expected it to be in chronological order, because that's the way biographical films used to be made in those days. And only some of the scenes will be dramatized and all that, and otherwise it'll be it's just a chronological film, okay, which covers various events and all that. And so here is a film, okay, which changes the order completely. Okay, so it's very crucial. The understanding the plot is very crucial, and and we have to construct the story. Okay, so can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So this is what this I have taken from the book Filmont, an Introduction. Okay, and here it says that it starts with boyhood, the youthful newspaper editing of Kane, then his life as a newlywed, middle age, old age. Okay. So this is Kane's life put in chronological order, and this is the story. But this is not what we see. This is something which we have constructed, okay, of course, in a very simple manner, okay. But this is the story of the film. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So the next one, you see, here is still, this is a scene in the, newspaper office. Okay, the editor Ralston, he wants to know what is Rosebud. Have you heard, what Citizen Kane has done? But now I want to know who is Citizen Kane. So the key to understanding Citizen Kane is, what is Rosebud? So find out what is Rosebud. That's what, he says. Okay. So next slide, please. By the way, the still which we saw just now, it has a chiaroscuro lighting, which draws from German Expressionism. And later, when film noir came, you had these kind of shots, chiaroscuro lighting, okay, which is already there in Citizen Kane. Okay, so Citizen Kane plot is, I think you have to go to the previous slide. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So it's not chronological, and it has flashbacks. And something interesting is that, you need to have a motivation, why the flashbacks are there. There has to be some motivation. And, the motivation in the film, the scriptwriters have really thought about it, and they came up with, Rosebud. Okay. Because that is the last word which, Kane uttered. So, Ralston, the editor, he wants to know what is Rosebud. Okay. And he asks Thompson to go out and find out, okay, investigate what is Rosebud. Okay. Now that gives a motivation, because now Ralston has to go out, he has to meet people, he has to, figure out, what is Rosebud. Okay, so it's a metaphysical detective story. Okay. By the way, something interesting is that it's got several genres. One is the biographical film, then you have the newspaper film genre, then the mystery film genre. It's got all kinds of things which make it very interesting. Okay, it's a metaphysical detective story because here we're trying to find out who is Kane, and um, you have to this guy Thompson, who's trying to investigate the inner self of Kane. Okay, and the audience, they have to reconstruct Kane through these fragments. The film just offers fragments, and we were supposed to reconstruct the story of Kane. Next slide, please. Yeah. Well, this is a scene which is there right in the beginning when Kane passes away. He holds this paperweight, and then he says rosebud. Okay. Shall go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So the plot of the film, okay, is like this. We have the palace where he's staying, Xanadu. Then Kane dies, and saying rosebud. Actually, it's somewhat banal. The idea that somebody like Kane, at the point of his death, what he yearns for is the humble sled which he played. Rosebud is actually the sled which we come to know in the end, and so he yearns for his last childhood, and actually also his mother's love which he lost because he had to separate from his mother and all that. So it's somewhat banal, you can say, but I mean, this is actually the criticism of George Luis Borges, the great Argentine writer. But he has also praised the film. He has written some very good things about the film. Although it's banal, it helps. Rosebud helps in giving the motivation, for Thompson to go and ask everybody what is Rosebud, and that way, there are various flashbacks are there, and through the flashbacks we come to know about the various aspects of Kane. So that way, Rosebud is a very good device, you can say. And then, the projection room, the editor Ralston, then Thompson and others, they watch News on the March, which is a newsreel. Okay. And the newsreel also is not strictly chronological, but it also mixes the past and the present a bit. But it is somewhat chronological, and it gives some idea, it gives some objective information about Kane. So that way, it helps you. I mean, we already know the Kane story. Actually, it is Kane's story told in a capsule for us. So, in fact, the flashbacks start. We already know something about, various events. So that way, the newsreel, it plays a very crucial role here, and it helps us to rearrange the plot because we're supposed to reconstruct the story, right? So that you can do thanks to the News on the March. Okay. And then the reporters, they discuss Rosebud, and then it cuts to the El Rancho nightclub, okay, where we have Susan. Thompson goes to meet the second wife of Susan, second wife of Kane, okay. And something very interesting about the film is that, okay, Susan, the second wife of Kane, will be the one who will know quite a bit about Kane. So logically, the reporter should go to her, and that's what he does. But there is a problem, okay? Susan was his second wife, so she wouldn't know about his childhood. She wouldn't know about the way Inquirer was started, and many things she won't know, okay? So if she starts telling the story, she'll be narrating the later part of Kane's story. Okay, so the scriptwriters, very cleverly, what they do is that they show her very, she's angry, she's drunk, and she says, get out, and so you know Thompson, he cannot really get anything out of her. Okay, so this way they nicely manage the scriptwriters, okay, to avoid her, giving her flashback, here itself. Okay, so logically he goes to the second wife, but okay, her story is postponed. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, he goes to Thatcher's library. Okay, so Thatcher is the one who was a guardian for Kane, and Kane's mother gave away her son to Thatcher, to because he was a rich man, and she thought that instead of living in the village, if Kane goes to city, okay, and he grows up there, it's better for him. He'll have a much better future. That's what Kane's mother imagines. So she gives away her son to Thatcher. Okay, but Thatcher is no more. But there is a Thatcher library in which his diary is there, and Thompson goes and he reads the diary. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here is the first flashback. Okay, while reading the manuscript, it's as though it is Thompson's version. Of course, this Thatcher's version, but Thatcher is dead. Okay, and yeah, can we show the clip here, please? Yeah, the clip shows, the young, Kane. He's playing in the snow. Okay, in the distance, you can see him through the window. Then in the foreground, you have Kane's mother and father, and Thatcher has come, and well, Kane's mother is going to sign the paper and give away, her son to go along with Thatcher. And look, the PPT is not there.
Hello, it's back.
Yeah, the PPT.
Yeah, we can see PPT.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, yeah. So what is interesting is that it shows the mother, then the father, and Thatcher in the foreground, and in the far distance you have Kane. Okay, it is shot in deep focus. Okay, we are going to read what is deep focus. Okay, something very important. As far as this film is concerned, and so that's one thing in this flashback. And then you have the growing up of Kane. He buys Inquirer, then he attacks big business, then depression, and he has to give away his paper and all that. Okay, so next slide, please. Yeah. So what is deep focus? Okay. Now, anyway, I think people nowadays, everybody is good in photography, so they know what is deep focus. So you have the foreground, middle ground, background. All of them will be in focus. Okay. For this purpose, what you do is, you use a small aperture, because if you have a bigger aperture, then the background will be out of focus. Okay. If you want to take a close-up, you need to go for that. Okay. Or you can use a wide-angle lens. So basically, deep focus is that. Okay. And that is having, the picture, clarity, in foreground, middle ground, as well as the far distance. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. Now, actually, Andre Bazin has written. Andre Bazin was a theoretician, and he has written about mise en scène. Okay, mise en scène is well, play whatever is there on the stage. Okay, in the case of cinema, whatever is there in front of the camera, which means the people, then the background, everything. Okay, so that is called mise en scène, and he made a case for mise en scène, as against montage. Okay, and see the Soviet filmmakers like Eisenstein. Okay, they wanted to show films as a montage. I mean, putting together of various shots, okay, to convey an idea. Okay, because their films were political, and so they wanted to drive home a message and all that. Whereas Andre Bazin, he was very much against that, and he was saying that in the case of mise en scène, that is the kind of film Orson Welles made. Citizen Kane, for instance, it's got defocus, and it is not trying to convey just one idea. The audience, they have the freedom, they can figure out. Okay, in fact, what you perceive in the film will be different from what I perceive. So there's ambiguity and all that. So that is possible. Psychological realism is possible if you have this kind of approach. And so he praised Citizen Kane, and he even said it's a new kind of filmmaking and all that, new conception of filmmaking, he wrote. Okay, so next slide, please. Yeah, this is a party scene. The newspaper Inquirer, it's a big success, and Kane throws a party, and this is still from that. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a second flashback. Okay, first we had Thatcher. Thatcher knew him from childhood, and then we also get to know something about Inquirer and all that. And here Bernstein was his manager. Kane's manager, and so in his flashback he talks about Kane taking over the Inquirer, then screw the party and all that, and things like that. Okay, and Kane returns with Emily. Something very interesting in the film is that his first wife is killed for some reason. Okay, if the first wife were alive, then Thompson, he would have had to go to her, and he would have asked her to give her story. The problem is already, Thatcher and Bernstein, they have covered quite a bit, and even Leyland is going to cover. So, whatever Emily is going to say will be somewhat, overlapping. So, what the scriptwriters have done is that they get rid of Emily. Emily and son, they are killed in an automobile accident. Something very interesting in the film. Okay, so now next slide, please. Any questions? If there are any questions, please. You can enter it in the chat box. We can take one or two questions now.
Hi guys, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question directly.
Okay, you can enter your questions in the chat box, and probably we can take them in the end. Okay, the next slide, please. The next slide. Oh, yeah. A nursing home. Yeah. The next, Thompson, he goes to the nursing home and meets Leland. Okay. Um, so Leland is somebody with whom, Kane went to the university, and, Leland joined him in his newspaper and all that. Okay. So Leland is definitely somebody, worth meeting. So Thompson goes to meet him. Okay. And so he talks about, Kane's first marriage and how it deteriorated and all that. And can you show the clip, please?
I can do props all play key roles in moving time forward and helping the audience to see the distance grow between the two characters.
So that was, one of the interesting scenes in the film, okay, where, you have a montage of sequences, over breakfast table, and, you find, the distance between Kane and his wife, Emily, it gradually increases physically. Okay, so it's one of the famous scenes. And then, so you have Leland's recollections continuing. Next slide, please. Yeah. This is another famous scene, Kane giving a speech. Okay, he stands for election. And yeah, next slide. Yeah. Then the fourth flashback, Kane goes to meet Susan. Okay. Then, so there's some overlap. There's something very interesting, there are a few places where there's overlap. What Thatcher says about Inquirer, it overlaps with what Bernstein says about Inquirer, but both have opposing views. Bernstein, loves him. He loves Kane, whereas Thatcher in his diary, obviously, he wasn't happy at all with Kane. And Leland was his close friend, but, they parted. So in his, flashback, he talks about, her Susan's opera and all that, and opera performance. And even Susan also talks about her opera performance. And, what is interesting is that, in the case of Leland, the opera is shown, from the audience point of view and how they find it distasteful. Whereas in the case of, Susan's flashback, it is shown on the other backstage, the kind of humiliation, Susan goes through. Okay, so both are about the same thing, but they're different. There's something very interesting about the film. Okay, and then it shows Kane's political campaign, his speech. Then Kane confronts Gettys. That's another interesting scene. Okay, next one, please. Yeah. Next one. Again, the fourth flashback is continuing, and he loses election. Kane loses election, and in fact, they have printed, two kinds of headlines. Okay, Kane wins the election. Another is fraud in the election. That's something interesting. And Leland asks for the transfer. Then Kane marries Susan and her opera premiere. Then Kane finishes Leland's review. Okay. The next scene, please. Next slide. This is a nice one. Okay. Nobody claps after the performance of Susan, but it's Kane who claps. Okay, it's a very nice scene. Next slide, please. In the fifth flashback, you have Susan rehearsing her singing and the opera premiere and all that, and Kane is particular that she has to go on singing and all that. Yeah, next one. Andre Bazin has written that the scene in which Susan attempts suicide. He says that in the case of montage style, it should have been shown in 5 or 6 shots, whereas Wells he has shown it in just one shot. Okay, he says that's very interesting and very important because there's psychological realism and all that, and you know, so in fact, he's developed this theory of mise en scène, based on films like Citizen Kane. And then Susan is bored, and another great scene is Susan playing with a jigsaw puzzle. And what is interesting is that the film itself is a jigsaw puzzle, and we have to arrange them, and as audience, we have to construct the story. Next slide, please. Yeah, in the next one, they go to a picnic and all that, and Kane slaps Susan, then Susan leaves Kane. Yeah, next slide, please. This is a very important scene. Next slide. Yeah. Where once he comes to know that Susan has left, he destroys the Susan's room and all that, and that is recounted by Raymond. So that is the last person he meets. Okay. What is interesting is that you have Thatcher, who was a very important man in the society, very rich and all that, and who took Kane as a child, and he was in charge of his education and all that, and so his account. Then you have, through his diary, of course. Then you have Bernstein, who was a manager, okay, who actually liked Kane very much. Then you have Leland, who went to university with Kane, but they parted. Then you have the version of Susan, the second wife. And then finally, the butler. Okay? And the butler is the one who talks about how, Kane threw away everything, destroys Susan's room and all that. Okay, and then finally, says Rosebud. Okay, next one. Yeah. What is interesting is that ultimately we find that the fragments they don't make a whole. And here I'm quoting Boris. He says Kane is a chaos of appearances, and the film is actually a centerless labyrinth. That's what he says. Something very interesting. You can read his review of the film. Then so we have Kane's positions, and finally we come to know what is Rosebud. That's something interesting. Yeah, can we have the clip, the last clip? Thompson couldn't get know what is Rosebud, but the audience is lucky we could get know what is Rosebud, but still we have not figured him out. We really don't know, fully about Kane. That's something very interesting. And there's also an answer to, the question by Nikhil. I think he's asking about whether it makes the audience omniscient. Well, the films in which everything is explained, clearly, and, there's no ambiguity. Okay. There you may say the audience is omniscient, they know everything. But here is a film where we really don't know. Many things about Kane, and it's vague, and there are only fragments we're trying to put together, and, like a jigsaw puzzle, but doesn't get us anywhere. We don't know, who is Kane. There's no center. Okay, so that's why, Boris calls it, a centerless labyrinth. So, in fact, we really don't know much. Okay, so that's actually the beauty of the film. So yeah, actually the audience is not omniscient. We really don't get to know Kane. Something very interesting. And what we have seen so far is mainly the plot segmentation, which I took from this book. Next slide, please. This last one, the references. I took it from Bodwell and Thompson book. Okay, it's titled "Film Art and Introduction." The plot segmentation I took from the book. It's extremely good, and this it gives the overall architecture of the film. So we're able to figure out, how it is constructed. And actually, the meaning comes out of the plot, the story which we saw in the beginning. It doesn't tell us anything, whereas it's the plot which gives the meaning for the film. So it's so important to understand the plot segmentation. Okay, and I also refer to the review of the film by George Louis Boris. Okay, it's available on the net. Okay, thank you so much, and yes, I should thank all the participants who attended this talk, especially Nikhil and Jeffrey. And I wasted an hour's time, and also a friend of mine, another Murali of Chennai. Well, because we had a dry run and we had all kinds of problems, and they sorted out. And so this talk was made possible because of that. So I thank Jeffrey and Nikhil. And let's take some questions if we have time. Already it's 7:10. Yeah.
Saket, you can go ahead.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, hi, Babu. I was wondering if you briefly mentioned lighting in this film and it being a little reminiscent of the expressionist era of films.
Yes.
Obviously, this has a very noir quality to it. People coming in and out of shadows and a lot of silhouettes.
Yeah.
There is,
yes.
But I'm very interested in how stark the lighting is sometimes and how it interacts with people and the faces, and where sometimes it's just Kane is completely in the shadow and other characters are normally lit, and sometimes Kane's wife, her face is only half lit, or it's just kind of very interesting. And also in conversations where Thompson is investigating Kane's flashbacks, or Kane himself, he's always in dark. He's always shown as a silhouette, and there is no short reverse shot there. So I was kind of wondering why there is a need to put some people out of context in the image, or use this noirish quality to tell a normal story, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Well, strictly speaking, I think, we have Dr. Murli Nagasundaram, who has seen more than 300 noir films. So he's an authority on noir. Dr. Murli, are you there? I don't know, maybe he has left. Okay, fine. I think, strictly speaking, noir started in 1944 or something. This film started in 41. But anyway, I got your point. This is noirish in the sense that, you have the chiaroscuro lighting, which actually is drawn from German expressionism. Okay, and so there's not a realistic lighting, and because here, especially Orson Welles is from stage, and so he has used a number of techniques from stage. For instance, the transitions from one scene to another, you can find that the lights are one by one switched off, and then finally it's dark, and then next scene. In fact, Mank has deliberately used that. Okay, it's actually a tribute to Citizen Kane. Okay, so he used a number of stage techniques also, and he drew from German expressionism. And the point you're saying is very important, because if you take Thompson, you never see him clearly. He's always you don't even see his face properly, because if you make him the center, very often an investigative reporter like this will be the hero or the heroine, and the film will revolve around that person. Okay, whereas here, Thompson, is somebody who, moves the film along, the story along. Okay, so we don't even see him, and even Kane. I mean, you don't see him so clearly very often, and all that, because that adds to the idea that in fact we see the real Kane. I mean, only during his death. Okay, all other times we see him through the eyes of others, through the flashbacks. So it is actually the version of Kane, okay, which we see, and it's not, Kane shown by the omniscient, a narrator or something like that. It's only once in the beginning during his death. All the other times, you see Kane only through the flashbacks. So, obviously, they themselves don't know, fully about Kane, and so you have to, you cannot fully, light Kane, and it's not like a film where everything is brought to the open and you know everything and God in the seat. No, it's not that. Okay, so yeah, obviously the style of lighting also goes with that. That's what I think. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you answered it. Thanks.
Yeah.